There's a reason we use a Japanese word for a catastrophic seismic ocean wave. Japan has had more tsunamis than any place else on Earth. And the massive 9.0 earthquake 9 days ago and the subsequent tsunami has left nearly 8,500 people dead, some 13,000 missing, and nearly 500,000 homeless. And it leaves Japan teetering on the edge of a nuclear crisis that has already resulted in measurable amounts of radioactivity turning up in milk, drinking water, and in some crops. Scott Pelley and a 60 Minutes team have been in Japan for more than a week, traveling from Tokyo to the port city Sendai to the once beautiful resort of Matsushima and into the zone surrounding the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. There tonight, emergency crews are struggling to restore cooling and stabilize pressure inside the reactors. What we have found in Japan is a catastrophe that reveals both the power of nature and the fragility of human technology.
The Fukushima Daiichi crisis is not one nuclear emergency. It is 4 potentially catastrophic events standing side by side. In all, there are 6 reactor stations. Numbers 1 through 4 are in peril. Last week, crews risked their lives to get water onto melting uranium fuel. Through explosions and blasts of radioactive steam, a few hundred Japanese joined battle with the most powerful force known to man. One of the Americans responding to the emergency is Julia Neshwat. She's a State Department official who was already in Japan working on nuclear issues. She served in Washington as Deputy Chief of Staff to the Director of National Intelligence. In Tokyo, she's been on the Fukushima disaster from the start.
We're providing the full resources of the United States government, everything we've got.
Yes,
we've
absolutely.
told them is at their disposal.
Absolutely.
Our best people are on this?
Yes, they are. Working nonstop around the clock in each of the operation centers.
And they are now working side by side with the Japanese?
Yes.
But that wasn't always the case.
Not in the beginning, no.
An American team of top experts arrived shortly after the disaster, but they were largely stuck at the U.S. Embassy. The Japanese didn't think they needed the help. But by last Tuesday, the emergency was out of control, and the U.S. gave the Japanese an ominous private warning.
That if we don't expand the efforts, will require heroic work done that could be quite devastating for the workers.
What do we mean by that?
That means they could very well lose their lives.
An official with the U.S. government told the Japanese that your people are going to have to die to save that plant, unless you let us help you.
Yes.
At one point during the week, the hazard was so great the Japanese took all but about 70 workers out of the plant. Their problem is water. The systems that keep the radioactive fuel rods cool failed. The rods are partially melting, releasing radiation. And it's not just the reactors. There are also used fuel rods, essentially nuclear waste, stored in pools nearby. They're also losing water, and American experts fear that one of these pools is already dry. Neshwat told us the danger is multiplied because the reactors are so close together.
That is a grave concern at this time. If there is an explosion, if there is a meltdown, a fire, it can absolutely affect the neighboring plants.
What would that mean?
Oh, goodness, I don't want to even think what that could mean. That's just something that we would have to really plan for at the greatest scale, and we're hoping and praying that that's not the case.
All last week, the U.S. said the crisis was more grave than the Japanese apparently believed, and so far, the U.S. experts have been right. Last Wednesday, the American embassy began a voluntary evacuation of U.S. citizens. It wasn't until 2 days later that the Japanese acknowledged the threat was greater than they'd thought. The Japanese declared a voluntary evacuation zone of 12 miles around the plant. The U.S. says it should be 50 miles. There is great uncertainty. Top experts disagree on fundamental questions, such as whether melting fuel rods would cause an explosion or just a fire. Answers are critical to planning for a bigger emergency.
It's just so uncertain. This is unprecedented, uncharted territory that the consequences could be greater than we expect.
More than 50 American experts are in Japan, including engineers from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and public health advisors. Many are working in 3 joint emergency operations centers around Tokyo. One of their biggest problems is getting a good look at the damaged reactors. Surveillance pictures have been poor.
You're dealing with the smoke, you're dealing with, the debris. It's just very difficult to make such an assessment of the situation. I mean, you're trying to really scrutinize the pixels of the picture.
The U.S. team is using cameras and sensors carried by drones in the air and robots on the ground to get a clearer idea of what's going on. No one knows what will happen at Fukushima, but it's important to remember that even without this nuclear crisis, Japan has already suffered a catastrophe. This was the moment that altered the course of Japanese history. The tsunami inundated about 400 miles of the northern coast. You can't capture the enormity of it, so we stopped in one small town. Matsushima was said to be among the most beautiful places in Japan, a famous vacation spot. The name has the same ring to a Japanese as Big Sur or Cape Cod does to an American. Matsushima means Pine Tree Island. The trees are about all that's left.
What was the personality of the town? What was this place like?
Oh, everyone's very friendly.
David Chumrunlert is a native of Texas who's been teaching English in Matsushima schools for a couple of years. We met over a canal where tourists came to fish. That's a bridge we're on. The canal is full of houses and cars.
This is where the kids from the school came from.
Yeah, they would come from here and around this area.
Nobiru Elementary School is around the corner. David Chumrunlert was among the teachers and students who were wrapping up the day when the building began to roll on the greatest quake Japan has ever seen.
The teachers were like, let's go check the classrooms to make sure everyone's okay and start getting everyone to the gym.
This is the earthquake-reinforced gym, which stands across the playground from the three-story school.
Some guy with a helmet on, he ran in and he was like, tsunami's coming. And then the principal was like, okay, everyone run back to the school. The fifth grade teacher, he was like at the front of the group and he said he saw a wall of water coming. So he's like, everyone run back inside.
It was too late.
Yeah, it was
to get out of the gym.
to get out of the gym.
Inside, there were about 200 people, children from 6 to 11, parents who'd come to pick them up. Less than 30 minutes after the quake, they were swept up in a surge of seawater and debris.
It was blasting through the door and it was like, when it was hitting the walls, it would make kind of like a whirlpool kind of motion. So at that point, it had risen up to the stage level.
Water didn't stop there.
No, it didn't.
What happened next?
I was starting to get like sucked out into the middle, and I didn't want that to happen, so I grabbed the wall. And then my grandpa and some lady who was hanging on to him, they washed by me and they managed to grab my shoulder. And so they were like hanging on to me, and we were like, I could feel it getting pulled.
What happened to the older man and woman who were holding on to you?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to them.
What happened then?
I grabbed the railing and I somehow found my footing. I don't know what it was, but I think it was the top of the basketball goal.
The water was that deep?
Yeah, it came all the way up to the second the balcony.
This is the goal and the railing behind. There's narrow standing room between the railing and the wall.
I saw like one of my kids, like he was like struggling, so I grabbed him. I grabbed his shirt, and I was able to like pull him over to the side, and he was able to grab onto the railing, and I helped heave him over. And I saw like a big desk with like 4 or 5 of my kids like hanging on to it, and they were like saying, they're shouting like, "Help me! Help us! Help us!" And finally, I was able to like grab a hold of the desk and pull it closer to me, and then was able to grab them one by one, and we were able to get them over. And then there was one more lady, and we got her over too.
In 2 hours, night had fallen.
You were in the total darkness, in the freezing cold, with the seawater all around you for 4 hours, 5 hours?
About 6 hours.
Wondering when the rescuers would come.
Yeah. And then the aftershocks would come, and everyone would just huddle down together and like afraid again.
What were you saying to the children over that long, dark night?
I just kept saying like, hang in there, and just like try to like give them a little smile, make them smile a little bit.
In a wrecked house nearby, we found a child rescued from the gym. 6-year-old Seina Suzuki in her grandmother's arms.
Came all the way up to here.
She told us, the water came up to my neck, up to my face.
How did you get away?
A teacher grabbed me by the arm and pulled me up out of the water. We don't know if it was David Chumrundlert who grabbed her. There's a lot that's unknown.
How many survivors would you estimate were up there on the balcony?
I'm hoping at least over 100. I hope. I'm not sure though.
We came back to the gym and were surprised to find those who did not survive lying across the basketball court and up there on the stage. Families searched for their loved ones, lifting blankets one by one in a combination of hope and dread.
There are about 85 bodies in the gym by my count. It is now 5 days since the tsunami. The Army has come in and done the best they can. They pulled a car out of this entranceway and wrapped most of the bodies up in Army blankets. But the fact of the matter is there is no place to put this many bodies. The morgues are completely full. And frankly, there aren't enough people to move them. It is a fact in this part of Japan that at this moment in time, there are not enough living to take care of the dead.
In Matsushima, we found this one small unit of Japanese Self-Defense Force engineers. They seem to vanish in the vast destruction. They're clearing roads and searching houses, but the response so far seems strangely small. They're spread thin over the 400 miles. There's no sense of hurry. The engineers knock off at dusk, a sign that they're not expecting to rescue anyone. Not now. All across northern Japan, nearly 500,000 are homeless. Nearly 1 million have no power, and more than 2 million are without water. In the coastal city of Sendai, a city of 1 million people, about the size of Detroit, we saw nearly 3,000 residents patiently waiting for a grocery store to open for the first time in days. There are shortages of food, and lines for gasoline stretch half a mile. Add to all of this what you might call nuclear refugees. Thousands are in shelters because their homes are too close to the Fukushima reactors. Tomonori Kato came in to be checked for radiation. He was clean, but his home is half a mile from the nuclear plant. He's lived there 50 years, and he told us that he expects he will never return. The nuclear refugees were loaded onto buses and hurried away, carrying almost nothing. Not only are their homes in danger of being irradiated, but every possession they own. Yoshihiko Igarashi's house is 3 miles from the plant. His daughter was born there. She turned 20 last week in the shelter. Like everyone, they've laid out a few square feet on the floor with no idea how long they'll be here. 1,600 people are in this shelter alone. It's just 20 miles from where the reactor fires are burning. If you believe U.S. experts, that's much too close. Igarashi told us he feels that way too. The Japanese are, for the moment, balancing between the disaster that has happened and the disaster that awaits. The Prime Minister told his people they will rebuild Japan. But all along the northern coast and in the town of Pine Tree Island, there is a powerful sense that for now, time has stopped.